jumper that Mummy made for Mummy's friend's little girl.
Taking your friend.
Yeah, it needs to dry and then I can send it to my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mummy's very hopeful that it will dry today.
Go up there.
Oh, you want to move it up here?
Yes, that's my mummy's.
Oh, okay. I think you can leave it there, Layla.
Think that.
Okay, thank you. Should we go upstairs and get your chocolate coin?
Yeah. Come. I want to go to there.
This one was yesterday, so next one is... Yeah! Are you gonna get it?
Yeah, that's what Mummy's been trying to tell you all morning. It's okay.
But
Yeah.
it's cold inside. It's a cold.
Yeah.
Maybe this one.
Oh, thank you, Layla.
You need full one.
I need small one.
I get a big one.
Oh, okay. Hey guys, welcome to Vlogmas day 19. I'm actually pre-recording this on the 18th, mainly because, as I mentioned in a previous Vlogmas, I am traveling on the 19th up to visit a friend who had a baby a few months ago, and I really don't imagine doing much in the way of filming during that time. So I might film little bits of me on the train on the way up and on the way back sort of thing, but I probably won't be filming much, if at all, whilst I'm visiting my friend and her little baby. So I wanted to do a little Q&A for you guys. There's a bunch to answer, so I'm going to do that this morning while I wind this fibre or this yarn onto my niddy noddy. Usually takes me a while, so I thought I'd answer some questions while I do it. And this fibre was from a loop bump that I spun this week, and I've decided to keep it as a single ply. I spun it on my jumbo bobbin because it was a 5-ounce bump of fibre, and we're going to see what it looks like once I finish winding it up. The first question's actually 3 questions that were all along the same lines, so I thought I'd answer them all together. They are: do you still own the house in New York? Are you planning on moving back to New York? And do you miss living in New York? Okay, so first things first, we never owned anywhere in New York. That would have been a dream situation, to be able to actually own property in New York City. But no, we don't have the apartment that we were living in New York anymore. When we did have it, when we first moved back to the UK, we still had the lease, but we sublet it for the remainder of the lease, and then once the lease ran out, we didn't renew anymore, because by that point we knew we definitely weren't going back. Do we plan on moving back to New York? Not immediately. We don't have any immediate or current plans to go back to New York, but never say never. We both enjoyed living there while we were there, but we're also really happy where we are now. I can't imagine moving back anytime soon. Not to mention that the visa situation basically makes it impossible right now. And do we miss living in New York? Yes and no. I miss it for the things that, you know, I wish I had time to do while we were there, but weren't able to do, mainly because Layla was too young to be able to do some of the things that I wanted to do with her whilst in New York. Also no, because I can't imagine her not being close to family anymore. I can't imagine us not having family nearby and being able to see both sides of the family as often as we do by being in New York and stuff. And that's, like I said, that's not to say that it won't potentially happen in the future, but because I'm very much one of those people who's like, never say never. You never know what's going to happen, what opportunities might come along. But for right now, we have no plans to move anywhere. We're really happy where we are. For now, our plans are basically to stay put. And then another question is there anything you don't like to knit or new techniques you'd like to try? Things that I don't like to knit: toys. I've knit maybe 2 or 3 toys in total. I just don't enjoy it. I love the outcome, but the actual process of knitting toys is painful for my hands, for my wrists, because you have to knit toys at quite a dense gauge, so it can be quite tight and quite hard to knit, and then it really hurts my wrists. It aggravates my wrists quite a lot, so I don't like knitting toys. New techniques I'd like to try, I don't know, I guess intarsia. I don't really have much desire to knit intarsia, but I think it's a really interesting technique, and it's always worth knowing new techniques or worth learning new techniques. What makes a pattern a repeat knit for you, one you're happy to make multiple times? I will be quite honest, I don't tend to knit patterns more than once, maybe twice. Usually with my designs, I'll knit them once or twice during the design process, depending on the design, but typically I only knit a pattern once. If I do knit patterns again, repeat patterns, they're either socks, like one of my sock designs, or like hats and something small. I don't tend to knit the same sort of like garment patterns repeatedly. I do on some of the children's ones. I will admit I've knit most of the children's sweaters more than once, mainly for like gift knits and stuff. I've heard you mention that you use an Excel sheet to keep track of your knitting projects. Can you give us an idea of what it's like? Yes, I actually did share that a few years ago now, my 2016 spreadsheet. It's basically still the same spreadsheet, I just update it each year with what I've currently got going on. I will link it below this video. Just an Excel sheet, and I think it's a blank one, so then you can just go ahead and put in your own things. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's just a table and the headings should tell you what to do. And then next question, will you be doing some more spindle kits for your shop? Yes, absolutely, but at this rate it's not going to be until the new year. I just have so much going on right now, and it's just not a #1 priority. I have the spindles, and I have one of the 3 types of fibre that I include in the kits already done, and I have the bags already, so I really just need to make the rolags and the little mini bats to go with the kits, so those will be coming, but like I said, probably sometime in January. Are the cats a specific breed? I had a couple of questions like this. Yes, they are Scottish fold cats, but I just wanted to say that there is a bit of controversy and a bit of an ethical issue around the breeding of Scottish fold cats. You see Derek skulking away in the background. With Scottish folds, because the folded ear look actually is the result of a genetic deformity. Because of that, and in order to keep them healthy, because if you breed a folded eared cat with another folded eared cat, the likelihood of the genetic deformity becoming exaggerated is higher, and they're more likely to have other health related issues to do with their bones and things like that, which can be really painful for them. So to breed them ethically, I guess, you would have to breed a folded eared cat with a non-folded eared cat, so with any other standard cat, as it were. And then there's a 50-50 chance of the kittens having folded ears, so some will have folded ears and some won't. But what happens is a lot of people, because they want to like exaggerate the folded eared look with like more than 1 fold, so you can get folded like Scottish folds with more than 1 fold in their ear, and it's really like exaggerated. You only really get that by breeding folded cats with folded cats, and it's not healthy. That is not healthy, and for that reason, and to discourage the breeding of them, and in fairness, like if you're breeding them ethically, technically Scottish folds aren't a specific breed because they're always being crossbred to keep the cats healthy. And because of all the ethical issues around their breeding, a lot of countries don't recognise the Scottish fold cat as a standalone breed, which I think actually is fair because of the ethical issues around them. That's the story behind the Scottish fold cat, and And yeah, that's what our boys are. We are very lucky they have not had any health issues, and they are very, very healthy little boys, or older boys now. The only health issues they've had are very typical cat issues. They're not specific to their breed. When did you start knitting socks, and did your technique change? I started knitting socks in December 2014, I want to say. It was the year I broke my leg. Was when I that same month was when I first started knitting socks. I remember we went on a trip to Iceland, and I was knitting my first pair of socks whilst we were in Iceland, and that's also where I broke my leg on that trip. I started knitting socks. I've always knit my socks 2 at a time. I started knitting 2 at a time, my very first pair, and I've been knitting 2 at a time ever since. I started doing toe-up socks actually initially when I first started, but then I was having a lot of fit issues with those, so I switched to cuff down at some point, and now my preference is cuff down. I also would do exclusively 2 at a time socks, but since having Layla, I now do a mixture of 2 at a time and concurrent socks. So I'll do 2 at a time for vanilla socks, and then if I'm working on pattern socks, I will work on them concurrently. So both socks are cast on at the same time but on separate needles, and then that's how I work them, just to it just makes it a little bit easier with a pattern sock and a toddler running around. I was never really a fan of the heel flap and gusset. I just found it too fiddly and it took too long, so I've always done a short row heel of some kind. I did Bishop's Kiss heel for a long time, and then now I exclusively do my German short row heel, which is a heel that I developed over time. How did you and Perry meet? Was it love at first sight? I've actually talked about this before, but Perry and I met at university. We were studying the same course. He was in the year above me at university, just the way it worked out with our birthdays and the academic years. But we both had volunteered to be representatives of our course for our university's open day. It happened on that particular open day, maybe only 2 or 3 people showed up who were interested in our specific course. So Perry and I had a lot of downtime, so we spent a lot of the day just sat around drinking tea, eating biscuits, about as British as you can get, and just chatting. At the time, both of us were dating other people, so it was nothing more than just chatting. It wasn't, I didn't think anything of it at the time. And then about a year later, no, 2 years later, so since then we were just like friends, saw each other around university, would say hi, didn't really socialize outside of university at that point. We didn't really, because he was in the year above me, we didn't necessarily have the same circle of friends. And then I went off to Vancouver for a year. By the time I came back, he'd already graduated, and then I was getting ready to do my finals when we were friends on Facebook, and I was just procrastinating, as you do, and I was browsing on Facebook, and I'd seen he'd posted something about having spare tickets for an event that he was going to, and anyone who was interested, just let him know, sort of thing. And I sort of blasé made a comment saying, oh, that sounds really interesting, but if I didn't have to study for my finals, I'd have totally taken you up on it, because it was like the day before one of my exams. Anyway, I just, again, like I said, thought nothing of it, moved on with my life kind of thing. A little while later, I got a direct message from him on Facebook being like, so someone's already taken that ticket, but if you want to go, I can get you a ticket. This is how little I was thinking about it at the time. I was just like, no, it's fine, I've got to study, like whatever. Basically I blew him off, only later realizing that was like his subtle way of trying to ask me out. Anyway, he messaged me a little bit later, like about a week later or something, and finally plucked up the courage to actually ask me out. But I was in the middle of my finals, so really, really sucky timing. So we just chatted over Facebook for the next couple of weeks until my exams were over. I refused to give him my phone number until my exams were done, because I was like, I don't need the distraction. But ended up being distracted anyway, because we were just constantly messaging back and forth. But it was fine. We went on our first date a couple of days after my finals, and the rest, as they say, is history. I wouldn't say it was love at first sight, because we already knew each other from before. We'd already known each other a few years before we started dating. What has been your favourite thing about being a parent so far? I think hands down my favourite thing about being a parent is watching Layla grow and change, and like just being constantly amazed at everything she's able to do and she's learning to do. I remember we were watching, Perry and I, we just like randomly picked an old Vlogmas to watch from 2017 when Layla was still like only like 9-10 months old, and there was a clip of Perry and her playing peekaboo, and she's pulling the blanket up, and then when Perry says peekaboo she pulls it back down. And I just remember back then being absolutely amazed at the fact that she could do peekaboo, and it was just like this amazing thing. And it's just like, I feel like every stage has that moment where you're just like, oh my god, I can't believe she's doing that, or like, that's amazing, I can't believe she's doing that. And it's just constant, this constant state of being amazed at your child for being able to do things that it's just very normal to be able to do as an adult, but as a child, and you're just like watching them do things for the first time and learning new things and learning new words and phrases, and you know, learning how to put their clothes on and put their shoes on and things like that, being absolutely amazing, which if you don't have children or if you haven't experienced that, might just seem a bit like meh. But when you watch your own children go through something like that, or your own child go through something like that, it's absolutely blows your mind. So I think that's my favorite thing about being a parent, is being able to experience all of her firsts and all of the things that she's learning to do and being completely blown away by it. Okay. Why did I decide to start a podcast? I started a podcast out of boredom. So in 2014, end of 2014, I broke my leg. And so I was in bed for about 6 weeks, laid up, watching podcasts and knitting all day. And then literally just as I got my leg out of plaster, when I was basically healed. I'd never had plaster for my leg, but when I was off crutches and out of the like moon boot thing, we moved to Bahrain. And within a month of moving to Bahrain, I was really bored. I'd lost my knitting group in Dubai. We were living in Dubai at the time. I'd lost my knitting group in Dubai, and I didn't have that sort of like interaction with other knitters anymore. And I'd been watching a lot of podcasts, and I was like, you know what, why don't I just start a podcast? And so on the 1-year anniversary of my learning to knit, I started a podcast. And yeah, it sort of took off from there, really. Everything grew fairly naturally. And I really enjoyed it. I still do enjoy it. My favorite recipe to cook for the family, I don't know if we have a favorite recipe. We kind of go, like, we rotate through stuff, and then every now and again for a period of time we'll have something that's a favorite. I do something that I call spaghetti bolognese. It is not spaghetti bolognese. It's basically mincemeat and tomato sauce with whatever vegetables I can find in the fridge thrown in, kind of thing. And then we'll either add kidney beans and a bit of chili powder and stuff to make it like a chili, or I'll leave it as is and serve it with pasta and call it spaghetti bolognese. Like I said, it's not a traditional bolognese by any stretch of the imagination. It's just what we call it. Another one that's fairly been a recent favorite has been a butter chicken recipe that I do, but it's not really butter chicken because it uses tikka masala sauce. Anyway, it's kind of like an amalgamation of a recipe. It's actually the curry that I made earlier this week that was in a previous vlog. I didn't have the right vegetables, so I threw in whatever vegetables I had. It's essentially just a chicken curry. Another one that's really a good favorite with us is just grilled meat or fish and roasted vegetables. That's always a favorite. Basically for me, it's whatever's quick and simple and can be done in like half an hour. It's my ideal dinner meal to cook. My friend Sam has asked, how was that Stonehouse coffee, which was the coffee beans that I finally was able to use from my advent calendar that Sam had sent me. It was amazing. I love the coffee. Thank you so much, Sam. Then, does having knitting as a profession ever get in the way of you enjoying the process? No, actually, I don't feel like it's ever gotten in the way of me enjoying the process of knitting. What it has gotten in the way of sometimes is I've ended up with a situation where I don't know what to cast on next, because I'm working on designs, and then I'm like not in a position where I can cast something on because I have to do some pre-planning or take some notes first, and it might be the weekend and we're out and about and we're doing stuff, or we're gonna go out and about and do stuff, and I just don't have the time to do that pre-planning before I can cast on. So then I'm left in like a situation of like, I don't know what to do now. In those situations, I will typically either work on a pair of vanilla socks, or I will work on some scrappy projects that doesn't need any pre-planning or anything like that. But I don't feel like it's gotten in the way of me enjoying the process, no. What's your favorite holiday tradition. I think one that's been a favourite of mine since Layla's been born now is what we do every year is Perry and I take her to see Santa together at the beginning of December. And that's been something that we look forward to doing each year. What is something you won't knit? I will be honest, I have very little interest in learning how to knit entrelac. Just not something I'm particularly interested in. How long did you want to learn to spin before you actually learned? Years. I'm not sure how long it was, but it's definitely been years. And I only finally learned because an opportunity came up for me to get my wheel, which was amazing. The reason why I hadn't started learning to spin sooner, and I had a little bit with like a handheld spinner, but was mainly due to space. Like we didn't really have any space in our apartment in New York for me to get a wheel, and wheels were expensive, and just it just hadn't worked out that I'd been able to do that yet. What kind of projects do you think best showcase tonals? Most projects, pretty much any project is going to be great for tonals. Something with a simple pattern, something with some color work, something like a sweater or an accessory. Basically tonals are so what's the word, flexible, versatile, that's the word. They're very versatile, so you can pretty much use them for anything. What's the greatest number of socks you've knitted in 1 year? Well, in 2016 I took part in a very crazy two-way competition between myself and another podcaster, and we had a competition in January to see who could knit the most pair of socks in 1 month, and we both ended up knitting 35 pairs of socks. But then throughout the rest of the year I was still knitting socks, and I think I capped out the year at around 90 pairs that year, maybe a smidge more, a smidge less, I can't remember. It was definitely around the 90. It was just under 100, I remember that. But that's the most I've knit in 1 year, which is probably more than I will ever knit again in 1 year. I will be quite honest, I don't think I'm ever going to get to that point where I feel the need to knit that many pairs of socks in 1 year. Which sock yarn that you've knit with has been the most durable? I will be honest, I've not had any issues with durability in any of my sock yarns. I don't think I've not naturally worn holes in any of my socks. The only times I've gotten holes in any of my socks have been because they've snagged on like a nail or something. So I've not actually worn through any socks myself. My dad has worn through some socks, but I haven't. Anything knit at a dense enough gauge is probably going to be fine. It depends on how you wear your socks. Like you said, I've never had any issues. I have socks that are made from 100% merino superwash that are still going strong, and I have socks made from hand spun. I have socks made from 80-20, 75-25, all the different sock blends that you can think of. The only one I will say that was not a good sock yarn to knit with, that I've had issues with, is the Hedgehog Fibers sock yarn, the 90-10 blend. That's the one that has universally had the most issues from the people from my family who's been gifted socks out of those, and the ones that I have from those. I think actually that's the only pair of socks I've ever blown a hole in, thinking about it now, yeah, because I had to throw a pair away. Do you miss the holidays in New York, or do you prefer where you are now this time of year? I will be honest, I do miss some of the holiday things in New York, but at the same time there's a lot of really fun Christmassy things to do around here. We're going to be doing some more Christmassy things this weekend, which I'm really looking forward to. And to be honest, being close to family around Christmas time is always really nice. Is there a kid sweater you'll be designing for adults but without a hood? I can't remember. Yes, so that was the Garden Gnome hoodie that I designed for children, and I was thinking about doing an adult version of that sweater but without the hood. So I haven't gotten around to doing that yet, unfortunately. It's one of those ones that's probably going to be a while before I get around to it. Favorite cast-ons, bind-offs, how do you weave in your ends? So favorite cast-on is just a long tail cast-on. I pretty much use that exclusively. I don't think I've ever actually used a different cast-on other than maybe like Judy's Magic cast-on or something like that. I find it works really well, and if you cast on loosely then it works really well as a stretchy cast-on as well. Bind-offs, I really like Jenny's Surprisingly Stretchy bind-off. I find that works really well for me. Again, I've never had any real issues with it. And how do I weave in your ends? Any way that I can. I don't do any special techniques. I just sort of weave up and down. And then Alana asks, when can we grab dinner again? Anytime. I'll be back in New York in January if you want to pop into the city one night for some dinner. Absolutely down for getting dinner. What's one fibre tool you could not do without? with regards to spinning, I'm imagining this is the question. I'd actually probably say my niddy noddy, because I'd find it really hard to wind my handspun without one, to wind it neatly and nicely. So I'd say the niddy noddy is probably one that I find really handy and use all the time. What would you be working, I guess, what would you be working as if you weren't a designer and a mum? I guess I'd probably still be a QS. I'd be a quantity surveyor. That's what I studied at university. That's what I was working on until we moved. That's what I was working as until we moved to New York. I'd probably still be a QS. Although I was good at my job, but I never enjoyed my job, if that makes sense. So I'd probably always be looking to get into something more creative. I almost quit my job to become a photographer at one point, so maybe I'd be doing that. Any adult male and female cardigan design plans? I'm not sure. The next couple of things I have planned are sweaters, but maybe a cardigan at some point. I used to always love cardigans, and I was always designing and wearing cardigans in the early days. And I do have a couple of cardigan designs out as well. But I think recently I find I'm wearing sweaters a lot more, mainly because it's just less to fuss with when I'm running around after my toddler. I put it on, it's closed, it's done. I don't have to fiddle around with buttons. And Layla has a thing for buttons, so when I do wear my cardigans that have buttons on them, she's always trying to play with them. I think that's partly why I've kind of naturally steered away from designing more cardigans. But I do have that shrug that's coming out that's kind of like a cardigan, so there's that. And then finally, what is your favorite mainstream brand of yarn? Lion brand, Knit Picks, etc. I think for affordability, Knit Picks is amazing. They have a good variety. There's some really lovely blends, and I think they cover a whole wide range of bases with what they offer. For sock yarn, I really like Regia and Opal. That's like commercial brands. Is Malabrigo considered a mainstream brand? I also really like Malabrigo. Yeah, I think that's it. All right, I think that's all the questions for now, at least all the ones I've had on Instagram up till this point. I do have a few questions on the YouTube video, the vlog from yesterday, so I'll answer those a little bit later. I can't believe I'm still winding this yarn. It is taking its sweet, sweet time. Hey guys, so it's a little bit later in the evening now, and I'm back to finish this what do you call it, Q&A. So I had a couple more questions on Instagram. The first one was, do you swatch flat or in the round? I swatch flat, and I've found over the years that my gauge knitting flat versus knitting in the round does not differ all that much. But of course the advice is always to swatch in the round if your project is in the round, but do what you will with that information. Sorry if you can hear music and stuff in the background. Layla's brushing her teeth with the toothbrush song. Have you ever had a magic knot come undone in your knitting, and if so, how did you fix it? I'm not sure that I have, but if it has happened, I've probably just like tied a really secure knot and just tried to do the best I can with the ends. And the final one from Instagram, will you have more children? Who knows, maybe we will, maybe we won't. We're happy either way, and we haven't decided one way or the other. And yeah, that's really that, to be honest. Going to YouTube, I had a bunch of questions on that thread as well. One was, do you have a knitting bucket list of places or festivals you want to visit? If so, what's on it? I'd like to go visit some of the Scandinavian countries a bit more. I love snow, so I'd love to go in winter time, and Perry loves cold weather, and so does Layla actually, so I think that'd be really fun. I'm also really fascinated by the northern lights, the aurora borealis, so it'd be nice to go to like the more northern parts of the Scandinavian countries to try and see those a bit more. In terms of knitting festivals, I would really love to go to Knit City one year, and maybe one of the festivals on like the West Coast. I haven't really been over to the West Coast in a long time, of the US that is. I'd also like to attend some of the more like European-based festivals as well. I don't have any specific ones in mind at the moment, but anything like that really. So where would you like to travel to that you haven't been yet? I mean, there are a ton of places I would like to travel to, but one of like my top bucket list items is South America. I've always wanted to go to South America. I think my ideal scenario for going to South America would be for me and Perry, or I guess Perry more, I can take my work with me, but to take some time off, maybe like 3 or 6 months, and go over to South America and travel around and explore and just get to experience what it's like to not just travel there, but also to spend a decent amount of time there. That would be on my bucket list. Other places I would really love to go to, I think one that's like creeping up on the list now is India. My brother's just been to India with some of his friends and he's had the most amazing time, and he's been sending me some of like the most amazing photos of like the food and just like the places he's been going to, and I will be honest, I am just maybe a little bit jealous of the fact that he's been able to go and I haven't been able to go yet. But that's also been on the list for a while. But there are loads of places I would like to travel to. So where can we find your instructions for the mini heel gussets for socks? I think it means the mini heel flap adjustment. That's basically with most of my sock patterns. If you buy the sock patterns, it will come with that as a separate attachment. If you're unsure, on the pattern pages for my socks, it will say if it comes with the mini heel flap adjustment or not, and you will get it with my vanilla sock pattern. I have a paid for vanilla sock pattern and it's included with that one. Do you think you would ever think about making some online classes, paid of course? All your classes sound so interesting and informative, and it would be beyond amazing for those of us who are unable to have a class with you in person. I have thought about it, I just don't know how to do it or what is the best platform for it. So if anyone has any suggestions on like the best platform to use for creating online courses, or something like that that is slightly less involved than having to set up my own website and to do it all like fully on my own, if that makes sense, that'd be great. I have no idea where to begin with something like that, but it is something I would be very interested in doing in the future. And this person also asked, how did you decide on the names Derek and Hugo for your boys? I've always wanted to name a cat Hugo. It's just always been a name that I really liked, and Perry picked Derek. It was his granddad's name. I'm not entirely sure, I can't remember exactly why he picked it, but we decided that's the name he chose for Derek, and it kind of really suits him. I really wanted it to be Victor, because then we'd have Victor Hugo, and who's an author, by the way, in case you didn't know. He wrote Les Mis. Perry decided against it and went with Derek, which I think really suits him, but I think he also would have been a really good Victor. When did you start knitting and how did you learn? I started knitting in 2014, March 2014, and I learnt by YouTube. In one of your Vlogmas shows, Layla was speaking another language. What language was it? It's Farsi. It's a language I speak with my family. It's a language spoken in Iran, which is where my family are from. And I've been trying to teach it to her a little bit here and there. Someone's asked what spinning wheel I am spinning on, and I spin on a Kromsky Sonata spinning wheel. It is a travel wheel, so it folds down. Last question, what was the experience of you and Perry meeting each other's parents for the first time? Good, to be honest. It wasn't anything super eventful or super exciting. I met his parents for the first time actually a few weeks into dating. We started dating in the summer, and summer 2009, and about 6 weeks after we started dating, Perry was going away for about 4 months. It was something that was already planned from before, so I knew that going in, and I was going to be doing a bunch of traveling that summer as well, so it wasn't that bad. But he did something called the Mongol Rally, where basically you take a old banged up tiny car and drive it from London to Mongolia, as you do. So he did that with a couple of his mates, and so I actually met his family for the first time at the launch of the Mongol Rally, at the send-off. So I went to sort of like wave him off, as it were, and say goodbye, and his parents and his sister were there. So that was the first time I met them. They were really lovely, really, really nice. And the first time Perry met my family was on the day I graduated, my graduation day. I actually graduated 10 months after I sat my final exam. It's just the way the schedules worked and when they did the graduation. So it was in March 2010 that my parents like officially met Perry. They'd met him once or twice before, but sort of like as a friend with some other people, even though we were dating at the time. I just hadn't really told them. I wasn't ready to like tell them yet. First time he met my parents was after my graduation. That same day in the evening, he came around to my parents' house for dinner, and again, that went really well. My parents have really liked him from day one, but no issues. Yeah, we've just been really lucky that both families are really nice to each other, and you know, his parents are really lovely to me and my parents are really lovely to him, so it all works out really well. Morning guys, I've got actually a couple of more questions that have come through since I recorded the Q&A yesterday ahead of time for today's vlog. So I thought I would answer these extra questions now really quickly. First of all, I had someone ask, do you have any tips or tricks for picking up stitches for sweater sleeves? Not really. It's just a case of give it a go, and if you don't like how it looks when you pick up the stitch and you sort of pull it up and you look, if you don't like how it looks, drop it, try again, pick up in a different spot. I don't think there's a real trick to it. I think it's just practice, and eventually you will find a way to pick up the stitches that looks good for you. And then I had someone else comment asking, just a curiosity, do you not all eat dinner together? Not a judgment, it's just you mentioned dinner's in the oven when she's going to bed. No, really, it's mainly because especially on nursery days, Layla has all her meals at nursery. It's just part of the price. They feed them 3 meals a day. She has breakfast, lunch and dinner at nursery. So by the time we've gone to pick her up, she's already had all of her meals. And then if she's a little bit hungry still, because they have dinner a little bit early, she'll have like an oat bar or some snack or some fruit or something in the car on the drive home, because she's usually too hungry, if she is hungry, to wait to get home. And she also has a bottle of milk before going to bed, so that tops her up as well. Also, on the days that Layla doesn't go to nursery, she tends to have dinner before us as well, mainly because she has dinner around 5, like 4:35 is when she's hungry for dinner, and that's just far too early for us to have dinner. And we start doing her bedtime routine at 6:30, which is like an awkward time. So yeah, so she has dinner at a different time to us, but we're still like with her when she has dinner. And on the days that she doesn't go to nursery, I eat breakfast and lunch with her, like we eat together. And obviously if it's the weekend, then we're all eating together for breakfast and lunch. It's just dinner's the only one where it's at a different time, because she goes to bed early, and so it just works out that way right now. Another question I got was, how do you change colours and carry your yarn for the striped jumper? It looks beautiful. Anything striped that I knit seems to have an obvious step. Thanks and happy Christmas. I don't do anything special. I just drop one yarn, pick up the other. I make sure the joins are snug, that they're not too loose, and that's it. I keep knitting. Mine still have joins. It's not a big deal. I really don't think anyone's going to be paying that much attention to what you're wearing for it to matter. I don't do anything special to try and get a jogless join or anything like that. I don't stress about that sort of stuff. And then someone had another question, spinning related. Do you have any tips on making rolags? Mine seem to be awful. I don't know if I make each layer too thick or what I'm doing wrong. I guess the trick is to try and keep it tight when you're rolling them. I don't really have any special tricks. Sometimes mine come out not great, sometimes they come out brilliant. It's I think it's just practice, and if you think and it might be that it's too thick, so you might want to try putting on less fiber. What video software do you use to edit videos? I don't use anything really special. I just use iMovie, which comes free if you have a Mac. Final question was, why don't you knit both sleeves at the same time, referring to the sweater I knit? It would be easier unless you're knitting them in the round. Yes, so those sleeves were knit in the round. I pretty much always knit my sleeves in the round. I don't really do flat sleeves. And I just find it easier with sleeves to do them one at a time, especially if it's 2 colours, because then if I was doing them 2 at a time, I'd have to handle 4 balls of yarn. Don't want to do that. Okay, I think that rounds out the Q&A section of this vlog. It's going to be quite a long one. I imagine this vlog's going to be quite a lengthy vlog, but I hope you guys don't mind, and I hope you enjoyed all the answers. Hey guys, so I've made it home. Had a really lovely day out and visiting my friend and her little baby. He's so cute. He's like 11 weeks old now, and he's just such a cute doodle, the chubby little baby. Like, so adorable. Anyway, back home, I don't think I actually filmed anything from when I left the house to getting back. And yeah, so now I'm just going to sit down and start editing today's vlog. I've got all the Q&As to go through and edit. So hopefully I'll get this up tonight, and then I guess I'll see you guys in the morning. Perry's just finishing up putting Layla down for bed, and yeah, I'm just a bit tired. It's been a long day, a lot of travelling. So I'll see you in the morning. Take care. Bye.